The late afternoon sun painted the Arizona plains in hues of gold and burnt orange. Dust swirled around the cowboy's boots as he rode slowly into the outskirts of a small Apache village. His hat shadowed his face, but his eyes scanned everything, the low huts, the children playing near a fire pit, and most of all, her. She was unlike anyone he had seen before. Small, almost fragile looking, yet there was a fierceness in her eyes that seemed to challenge the desert wind itself. He dismounted, the leather of his boots cracking softly against the dry earth. The villagers paused, glancing at him warily. The tiny Apache woman stood a few paces ahead, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp, but not unkind. Her dark hair fell in messy braids down her back, and her stance was strong despite her small frame. "I'm just a traveler," he said, lowering his gaze respectfully. "Passing through." She studied him for a long moment, eyes narrowed. "Passing through," she repeated, as if testing the truth of his words. Then, almost defiantly, she added, "My body's too small, cowboy, I'm not breeding material." He blinked, surprised. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, not mocking, but amused and gentle. "Size doesn't matter," he murmured, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "What matters is, what's in here," he said, tapping lightly on his chest. She stepped back instinctively. "You don't understand. I've been told all my life that I am too small, too weak, not enough for anyone like you." Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. There was vulnerability in her eyes, quickly replaced by defiance. The cowboy reached out, but cautiously, giving her space. "I understand more than you think," he said softly. "I've met many who measured people by appearances. But I've learned, true strength doesn't come from size. It comes from courage, heart, and trust." She hesitated. The desert wind tugged at her braids as if urging her forward, yet something held her back, pride, fear, maybe both. The cowboy remained patient, silent except for the occasional, soft word. Gradually, she lowered her arms, curiosity and intrigue battling her instincts. "Why are you here?" she finally asked, voice quieter. He looked toward the horizon, the sun casting long shadows across the sand. "I came looking for freedom. And sometimes, to find it, you have to step into worlds unfamiliar. Like this one." The tension between them was palpable, electric. Neither fully understood what drew them together, yet something unspoken had begun to stir, a connection beyond words, beyond size, beyond expectations. For a long moment, they just stood there, watching each other, the world around them fading into the orange haze. And in that silence, both realized something remarkable. Perhaps this encounter was more than chance. Perhaps it was the first spark of a story neither of them expected but both could no longer ignore. Night fell over the Arizona plains, the sky a deep indigo scattered with stars that glittered like tiny fires. The village had quieted, and the cowboy had set up camp near the edge of the settlement. The crackling of a small fire broke the silence, sending sparks swirling into the cool night air. He sat on a fallen log, polishing his boots, but his mind kept returning to her, the tiny Apache woman who had challenged him in ways he had never experienced before. Suddenly, a shadow moved near the fire. She appeared, hesitant, hands clasped in front of her. Her small frame seemed almost fragile in the dim light, yet there was a strength in her posture that made him pause. "You don't belong here," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. "And neither do you," he replied, his tone calm, even gentle. He gestured to the fire. "Sit, eat." He held out a piece of dried meat wrapped in cloth. Her eyes darted to it, suspicion and curiosity mingling. Finally, she stepped closer, accepting it without a word. They ate in silence for a few moments, the night sounds of the desert filling the space between them. Crickets chirped, and the distant howl of a coyote echoed across the plains. She finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "I warned you before. I can't give you what others expect from a woman like me. I'm not made for it." He looked at her, meeting her eyes in the firelight. "I don't want what others expect," he said softly. "I want what's real. I want you, your thoughts, your courage, your fire. Not what anyone else says you should be." Her heart skipped a beat. The honesty in his eyes, the calm strength in his voice, it was different from anything she had ever encountered. For the first time, she felt the possibility that someone could see beyond her small size, beyond what society deemed her worth. Yet pride still held her back. "You make it sound easy," she whispered, "but it's not. My people, they have rules. Expectations. I know, he said, reaching for her hand, letting his fingers brush hers. She flinched but didn't pull away. And I won't force you to break them. But trust me, I'm not here to take, only to stand with you. If you let me. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and earth, wrapping around them like a quiet promise. She felt something stir inside her, fragile yet undeniable, curiosity, trust, and perhaps even hope. Maybe I can trust you, she admitted, her voice trembling with vulnerability. He smiled, not too wide, just enough to warm the night. That's all I ask. For a long time, they sat there, hands almost touching, sharing the silence and the warmth of the fire. Outside, the vast desert stretched endlessly, but inside that small circle of light, two worlds began to intertwine. She, the tiny Apache woman with fire in her heart. He, the wandering cowboy who respected freedom above all else. The night held them in its quiet embrace, and for the first time, both felt the thrilling, terrifying spark of something neither could yet name, but neither wanted to escape. The morning sun broke over the jagged Arizona canyons, spilling light across red rock cliffs and narrow trails. The cowboy packed his belongings, but she was already waiting near the path, small figure poised like a watchful hawk. You're early, he said, amused. I know these lands, she replied tersely, folding her arms. You'll need guidance if you hope to survive the canyons. He nodded, respecting her authority. Lead the way, he said, climbing down the rocky incline carefully. The canyons were alive with hidden dangers, slippery ledges, sudden drops, and the ever-present desert heat. She moved with precision, every step measured and deliberate. He followed, learning quickly that despite her small stature, she was strong, fearless, and resourceful. Every time he reached to steady her on a tricky ledge, she shook her head, brushing his hand aside. I don't need help, she insisted. He smiled knowingly. I never said you did. I just like being near you. Her cheeks flushed at the unexpected compliment, and for a moment, her guard slipped. They stopped near a narrow cliff edge, overlooking a canyon floor that stretched like a scar of red and gold below them. The wind whipped around them, tugging at her braids, yet she stood tall, fierce as ever. I warned you, she said, her voice softer now, I'm not for anyone to claim. He turned to face her fully, resting his hands lightly on her shoulders. I don't need to claim you, he said, meeting her eyes. I'm here because I want to be. Because I choose to be. Not because I expect anything from you, just because you matter. Her heart fluttered wildly. She had been told her whole life that size and appearance defined her worth, yet this man, the cowboy, saw her entirely differently. For the first time, she felt visible, respected, even cherished. They continued through the canyons, their conversation flowing between silence and shared laughter. She taught him how to identify edible plants, track signs of animals, and navigate the hidden paths that only her people knew. He listened, watched, and learned, not as a master, but as an equal, absorbing every detail with quiet reverence. As the sun climbed high, they paused near a spring hidden in the canyon shadows. She knelt to drink, and he followed, their reflections mirrored in the clear water. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, and she didn't pull away. The gesture was simple, yet it spoke volumes. Trust was building, a fragile thread binding two very different souls. I didn't expect this, she admitted, her voice barely audible over the wind. That I could feel this, with someone like you. He smiled gently. Neither did I, he confessed. But sometimes, the best things come when we step into the unknown. And I think this, us, could be something worth holding on to. She met his gaze, the fear of judgment and expectation battling against her growing curiosity and hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where strength wasn't measured in size, and love wasn't confined by rules. And as they moved deeper into the canyon, side by side, she realized that courage wasn't just in survival. It was in trust, in letting someone in daring to feel. The sky darkened suddenly, the sun disappearing behind thick, angry clouds. The desert wind picked up, whipping dust and small stones across the rugged canyon floor. The cowboy and the tiny Apache woman were halfway through a narrow passage when the first drops of rain began to fall. We need shelter, she shouted over the rising wind. He scanned the rocky cliffs, spotting a small cave hidden behind a jagged outcrop. There, he called. Together, they raced through the growing storm, their boots slipping on wet stone, hearts pounding with adrenaline. Inside the cave, they huddled close, the wind howling outside like a wild beast. Lightning flashed, illuminating her tiny frame against the shadows of the cave. She shivered, not just from cold but from the raw intensity of the storm. He draped his jacket over her shoulders, his hands firm yet gentle. "See, you're not too small for anything," he whispered. Her breath hitched. For so long, she had believed that her size made her weak, invisible, unworthy. Yet here she was, held by someone who saw strength not in stature but in courage and heart. Slowly, she leaned into his chest, feeling protected yet free. Maybe I can be more than I thought," she admitted, voice trembling but sincere. He held her tighter, resting his chin lightly on her head. "You already are," he said. "I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to stand by you, no matter what." The storm raged on outside, thunder rolling like drums across the canyon walls. Yet inside the cave, there was a fragile, perfect calm, a bubble of warmth, trust, and newfound understanding. She lifted her eyes to his, searching for any hint of doubt, but found only unwavering certainty. Minutes stretched into hours, and the rain finally began to ease. Outside, the desert was washed clean, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and sage. They stepped out of the cave together, her small hand in his large one, and for the first time, the world didn't feel overwhelming. It felt possible. "I never thought someone could see me like this," she murmured, gazing at the horizon where the storm clouds were breaking apart, revealing streaks of sunlight. "Like I'm enough." "You are enough," he said simply. "Not because of what anyone expects, but because you are you. Brave, strong, and real." A quiet smile touched her lips, and she squeezed his hand. They walked back toward the village, side by side, two very different worlds walking in sync. The desert around them stretched vast and endless, but now it didn't feel lonely. She realized something profound as they moved together through the wet sands. Size, tradition, and expectation could not define her. And love, real, patient, unwavering love, didn't come with demands. It came with trust, understanding, and courage. And in that moment, the tiny Apache woman and the wandering cowboy discovered a simple truth: together, they were unstoppable. Not because they defied the world, but because they chose to face it, together, equal, and unafraid. The desert sun finally broke through the clouds, casting warm light on two figures who had found more than survival, they had found each other.